Welcome to Aggressive Life. For the month of July, we're going to run some of my favorite non-aggressive life content captured over the past year. Actually, Dirt's favorite non-aggressive life content captured over.
I like all of these.
Yeah, he likes all of them. You made the recommendations. I totally buy into it. All good by me. And I hope these conversations and talks can help push you forward this summer. We're starting off with a live talk I gave just a few weeks back at Father+Son Camp. It's a primitive weekend camping experience for dads and their boys aged 7 to 17. It was awesome. I wish I could have done that with my son. I wish it was around. So powerful. So we created that because dads and sons relationships are a tender thing, and we want to help young boys get to another level. We want to help dads solidify that critical relationship with their son. And so while we're talking father-son, this, if you're a mother and you got a daughter, is just as applicable. It really is. This is more of a parenting talk than a father-son talk. It was really fun. It was given to a big tent with 800 plus fathers and sons, and I walked them through all the 4 stages of fathering, same as mothering, by the way, and how the relationship changes at each phase and how you need to hand off and shift into new phases. Because when we don't shift into new phases, the relationship really suffers. You can find out more and even stake your claim for next year's Father-Son Camp at crossroads.net/camps. Crossroads.net/camps. Now let's get out to base camp.
So let's welcome up Brian Tome. Get up here. Get up here. First time at Father-Son Camp, right? And so guys, you're about to get blessed.
Thank you, Terry. Yes, it is my first time at Father-Son Camp. Thanks for the invitation. Man, what's guy got to do to get invited around here to something? My son is too old to qualify for Father-Son Camp, or he would come. I got to tell you, dudes, I sat there. Oh, I'm already starting to cry. I sat there during worship. I thought, man, I would have given my left nut and right one probably to be able to have an experience like this with my son when he was 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, whatever it is. So I'm so thankful this land is being used for this. It's really, really good. Yeah. I was also thinking of all the talks I gave last year, of all the talks I'm going to give this next year, this very well could be the most important talk I give all year long. And let me tell you why that is. I talk a lot, and it's really great when you talk about Jesus and you talk about the gospel and people give their lives to Christ. That's obviously is amazing. It's great when you give people thoughts about how to improve their lives that comes from the scriptures. That's all great. But this is one of those talks, this is one of those events where it literally can change your life and cause you to have a different life from here on in. Because there's a sacred bond, I believe. It's sacred between a father and a son. Not quite as sacred as a man and a wife, but it is sacred. And all through the Bible, we see this sacredness. Your dad knows the reason he brought you here and the reason he was excited you're here. And sons, well done coming along with your dad. I find most of the time it's not the kids that are dragging the dads are dragging the kids. So kids, well done. Well done coming. And let me tell you why your dad did that. Your dad did that because he has a vision to have you be a great friend for the rest of his life. Because your dad's been around long enough that he's had friends who have come and gone. He's been in high school, he's been in junior high, he's been in grade school, he's been in college. He had last job that he had maybe. And all these people he thought he was going to be friends with, but then you move on. And that person isn't your friend anymore. You're just not around them. Nothing has happened wrong. They're just not around. Very, very rarely does a man have a friendship, a true friendship for decades. But his best shot is you, because you'll be with him for decades. In fact, he's planning on you when he gets old and decrepit, he's planning on you wiping his rear end. That's what he's hoping. Can you just tell your dad, I'll wipe your butt? Tell your dad right now, I'll wipe your butt. Tell him that right now. It is true. This can be a friendship that defines both of your lives. My friendship with my son is one of the most fulfilling things for me. It's really special. Now, everybody would love to be a friend with their son. Everyone would love to be a friend with their dad. The problem is there's a process that you have to go through. And if you don't do this process, there will be an outage in your friendship. You may not be able to have a friendship if you don't work this process. What I'm sharing with you today is the process that you have to work. And as I share this process, there's 4 stages. Everybody in here is, well, no one's in the first stage. I'll talk about the first stage. First stage is a nurse. That's what the dad is. He's a nurse. Everybody, the other stages, king, coach, friend. Everybody else is in one of these phases. And so when we go through these, it might be an interesting discussion point for you to ask your dad and you ask your son, which phase do you think we're in? Where are we? And what would have to happen to go to the next level? What would that be? So let me talk about them. I'll share with you. Number 1, the first phase, it happens by default, is the phase of nurse. Your son is born, or you adopt your son. He's a little itty bitty guy, and he can't speak. He can't feed himself. He can't do anything. All he does is poop himself. They told me to do a lot of poop jokes, so I'm doing that right now. And all you do as a dad is you're a nurse. That kid gives you nothing. He gives you nothing except tears and messes and screams and sleepless nights, and you grin it and you bear it and you deal with it. This is why the best friends will always be those people who have probably been a father before, because they understand how to suck it up when you're whining. There's a kind of thing that happens in a man's life when he learns that no matter what, I can't say yes to myself. I have to say yes to my son. I got to get up in the middle of the night, got to change his diaper. I've got to go to work. I've got to feed him when he's a little guy. And you learn this discipline of sacrifice, this discipline of you don't get anything. And most dads hate the nurse phase. Most, not all, but most hate the nurse phase. It's pure suck it up. It's a gut check. It's I got to do this. It's the nurse phase. That's the first phase. It's by default. It's with all of it. The second phase is, maybe I should spend some time on this. This is the most controversial phase. And this phase actually is the phase that sets you up to be a friend. The second phase is the king phase. This is where you exert your authority over your son and you let him know, and he knows with no uncertain misunderstanding that you are king, that your word goes. This is very controversial. I don't understand it. I interacted with you probably would all know the name. It's a very big car dealer in the area. And I knew the father and the son, and they had an outage in their relationship when they were younger that never got mended, and they have a break to this day. And I believe the reason was because the dad used to tell his young son, he said, look, I'm not going to be your dad, I'm going to be your friend. I want to be your friend, I want to be your friend. And as a result, he never laid down the law with his son. And as a result, his son never learned to respect him. When you're a king, you realize, I don't know if you know this or not, dads and sons, don't take this personally, even if you're 17, I know this is going to be shocking to you, but let me tell you anyway. Your dad knows more than you. I know, it's shocking. He knows more than you. Seriously. If your dad could go back to being 8 years old again, he would crush life. If your dad could go back to being 16 years old again, he would nail it. His grades would be amazing. He'd be most popular in school because he just understands how life works. He understands when not to say something. He understands basic wisdom. He gets it. And when a man is unwilling to exert his authority over his son, he doesn't help him because you have to help him figure out life. My son was always asking me questions. Dad, why? Because you give him the answer. Why? Let's just pick one up. Dad, why can't I play with a hammer inside? Can't play with a hammer because something bad could happen. And what is his response? Why? Well, because you could take your hammer and you could hit the glass table and it would break. And he would say, why? Well, because you swung it in the wrong place, so I don't want you to swing the paper. But why? And finally, it all boils down to this. Because I said so, that's why. Because I said so. The sooner you can get to because I said so, and you have a relationship with your son, respects you, where he just does it, this is critical. The kingship phase is critical. And by the way, the same with mothers. You want to download this, talk with your wife. She needs to be a queen. She needs to learn to exert her authority. Now, here's the problem. I'm really, really big into the king phase. I think it's probably the phase that's the most lacking in our current culture. For some reason, we just don't want to tell our kids what to do. And that's really doing them disservice because you know more than them and you love them. You actually love them more than they love themselves. But this one here in our culture are so freaked out about it that I think this is the missing piece. Now, as I go in these other phases, let me tell you what happens. As I go through all these 4 phases, all of you are going to find one of these phases that you're a natural in, that you really get down really, really, really well. The key is you have to move through these phases, and the key is in the handoff. You have to hand off and get to another mode. And some people, I know some guys who are still in the king phase when their kid is in college. In truth, he's not the king. The son doesn't respect him as a king, but that's the only thing to do. He's still trying to tell his son what to do when he's 19 or 20 years old, and it just doesn't work. We have to hand this phase off. So you go from the nurse phase into the king phase, and then the next phase is the coach phase. This is when you learn to give your son authority and give them responsibility to make decisions. When Jesus was baptized, he heard the voice from his father, and his father said, "This is my son who makes me happy." That's pretty crazy. In fact, in the Bible, we've only is recorded in the Bible 3 things that Jesus ever heard from God. Only 3 things. Like God never tells him where to go and preach. He never tells him who the disciples should be. If God the Father did tell him that, it's not recorded. 3 times he talks to him that's recorded. 2 times it's the exact same thing. It's at the transfiguration, which is later in his life, and it's his baptism, and is this: "You're my son who makes me happy." Sons, just understand, it's pretty cool that your dad is here because you're here because you make him happy. I don't know if you thought about this. He had a bunch of other things he could have done today, a bunch of other things all weekend, but there's something about who you are as a son, as his kid. He just likes you. He doesn't just love you, he likes you. He likes being around you. I hope you realize that's really cool. That's really rare. I didn't feel that with my dad. My dad and I never had a great relationship. We have a relationship. I love him. I'm thankful for him. But there was a lack of an emotional bondedness that happened with me and my dad. And I think it was because I never felt like I measured up to him. I never felt like I made him happy. We would do father-son projects for this thing we were with at the YMCA. And it was supposed to be my project. And by the time he was done with it, I couldn't even recognize any of my work. Because he would say, "Let me just touch it up." Because he's a perfectionist, he's a nuclear engineer. So by the time he was done touching it up, I couldn't even notice it anymore. It made me feel as a young kid like you can't trust me, you won't let me do anything, you're not into me. I didn't know this I wasn't thinking about this as a little kid, but looking back on it, I think that was a short circuit in our relationship, is that we had a lack of bond there because he wouldn't give me trust. And this is what happens in the coach phase. You allow yourself to trust your son to make decisions. In the book of Hebrews, it says this: "Although Jesus was a son, he learned obedience through what he suffered." He learned obedience. It was important for Jesus to learn obedience. When you're under a king, you just have to learn to obey. "Yes, sir, I will. Yes, sir, I will. Yes, sir, I will." But then it comes time where dad's got to give his son the ability to make decisions. Maybe you wanted your son to play Little League, and then by the age of 11, he doesn't want to anymore. And you have to discern as a dad, does he not want to anymore because all he wants to do is stay inside? That's not healthy. Or does he not want to anymore because there's another sport or something else he might want to do instead? And you have to decide as a dad, when am I going to coach him? When am I going to let him make decisions? What girls he dates. It's really good to give your kid coaching in terms of who they date. Not necessarily, "Hey, this one over here, you should date her." but son, let me tell you what you should look for in a girlfriend. You should look for somebody who has the same faith as you. You should look for somebody who likes to laugh. You should look for somebody who doesn't need you to be her father figure. That's a big one. That's a big one. When a girl doesn't have a healthy father, she's going to look for her boyfriend to fulfill needs in her that only her father can. And very frequently, that means that's going to be a girl who's going to be very promiscuous, and she's going to want you to have sex with her. She's going to want to do that because she wants another male to make her feel loved, and sex is the way she views that because she doesn't feel loved by her dad. The most promiscuous women and girls are always those who haven't had a loving, engaged father. Always. Like the old Family Guy clip. I don't know if you saw this. You've seen this? He comes into the bar and he says, son, let me tell you. When you start a conversation and you find out a girl has a really healthy relationship with her father, just move on to the next one. You coach your son. What do you look for in a girl? How do you treat a girl? How do you open it all that? But he has to decide if he dates, when he dates, how he dates. It's the coach. Again, it's the handoff. I know some dads who've been a king and they're still trying to tell their son who to date when they're 16, 17, 18 years old. It doesn't work that way. Shoot, I was at couples camp. I was at couples camp and a camp over here with some couples who I didn't know, and his father is still trying to tell him why his wife was the wrong choice. Horrible, utterly horrible. And of course, he has no great relationship with his father. It's got to be in the handoff. So we go to coach, give them authority, give them responsibility, let them decide things. When I used to go away on trips, I would come back and I wanted to coach my son to do, like, one thing was handle dangerous objects. One of the ways you confer trust in your son and you help your son know that you believe in him is you trust him when other people wouldn't trust him. You say, yeah, you can do that. You can do that. If I was at a place like this and there was a four-wheeler, I would try to get someone to let my son drive the golf cart. Well, you can't do it. He's only 7. Oh, I know. That's exactly why I want him to do that. I want to do that because I want him to know I trust him, I'm giving him some authority, and I think that he can do it. Whenever I would go out of town, I would buy a knife for my son, the sharpest object I could, and I would bring a knife home, and I would give him a knife. He has this little collection of knives when I went out of town. And people would say all the time, like, you can't give your kid a knife. I mean, it's dangerous. I know it's dangerous. He could get stitches. Right. That's the whole point. And every day he doesn't get stitches, he knows dad thinks that he can handle it. Dad thinks that he's a real grown-up. And when he gets stitches, it's stitches. We need to have more stitches these days. We don't do enough dangerous things, right? But what that confers is, I trust you. I'm in coach phase. I'm not just controlling you now. I wouldn't give a knife to a 2-year-old, but you're not a 2-year-old. When the kid decides to go to school, go to college, you have to coach. Like, you've got to, what school you want to look at, son? Do you want to go to school? Maybe school isn't the right thing for you. That's one of the reasons I had a horrible college experience. My parents weren't coaching me about what college was. They were just trying to king me, say, got to get an education. Guess what? A college education isn't right for every 18-year-old. It wasn't right for me until I was about 20. They weren't coaching. They just kept trying to tell, and I kept trying to rebel. But there's a coaching phase. How do you let them have responsibility? And then the final phase, the one you want to build to, is the friend phase.
Hey, if you're a pastor, keep listening. If not, no worries. Hit that skip button. Last year, I worked with Ministry Solutions to offer mentoring to pastors. And man, I really, really enjoyed it. And the dudes I work with said they really, really benefited. I met monthly on Zoom. I discussed topics like leadership, staff and church culture, strategic planning, innovation. And between cohort meetings, I had a private one-on-one phone conversation and unlimited text message access to me. And those guys still do. It was a really great experience, and I want to do it again this fall. So if you want to do it, if you're a pastor, signups are currently open for the next group of pastors, but space is very limited. And if you're interested, you can send an email to dirt@briantome.com. That's dirt@briantome.com. Now back to the show. Flying K Ranch. Today's episode is brought to you by them because I believe they're producing some of the most mouth-watering, healthy burgers, steaks, roasts I've ever had. They're in Findlay, Ohio. Flying K raises their beef with no hormones or antibiotics, so you know you're getting the most natural product. It's a family business partnering with state and national certification boards to ensure both cattle and customers are happy. You can find out more, place your orders at flyingkranchangus.com. That's flyingkranchangus.com. I'm liking it a lot. Taking care of your health isn't always easy, but it should be at least simple. That's why for the last 2 years, I've been drinking AG1 every day, no exceptions, at home, on a hunting trip, camping off my motorcycle, no exceptions. It's just one scoop mixed in water once a day, every day, and it makes me feel ready to get moving. That's because each serving of AG1 delivers my daily dose of vitamins, minerals, pre- and probiotics, and more. It's a powerful, healthy habit that's also powerfully simple. I like to have it in the morning. I have a 12 ounce of water, so right off the bat, I'm helping my hydration every single morning. This is the one product, if I had to recommend one, I'd recommend this one to elevate your health. It's AG1, and that's why I partnered with them for 2 years. So if you want to take ownership of your health, start with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/aggressivelife. That's drinkag1.com/aggressivelife. Get yourself some.
Final phase is the friend phase. This is the phase where you allow your son to give you feedback. Actually, it's okay for your son to give you feedback when he's in the coaching phase too. In the coaching phase, you're not just giving them things to do, you're also allowing him to tell you some things. The best coaches in the NFL listen to their quarterback, they listen to their players. You're allowing him to speak into things. You're allowing him to have a voice. It's reciprocal. It goes back and forth. In the friendship phase, you're in the place where your son starts to know all of your pain points because every true friend knows the pain points. You start to experience life and have fun with him. I had someone give me tickets to a UK basketball game. This was years and years. Any UK fans in the house? Yeah, there we go. UK basketball. It was a UK basketball game. It was a pretty big deal, pretty big game. And I had 2 tickets, and I took down my son with me from Cincinnati. It was, I don't know what that is, an hour and a half ride or something like that, down to, is it Rupp Arena? It's still Rupp Arena? Okay. I know I'm being heretical for those of you from Lexington that I don't know the name of the stadium. Sorry about that. And my son said, why do you want to take me? And I said, because of all the people in the world, all the other guys in the world, I'd want to spend time with you. He said, really? You would do it with me? Yep, really, with you. It was wonderful. The worst cry I ever had, it was a boo-hoo, sob cry. The worst one I ever had was when my son was, I think he was about 12 years old. He was 12 years old, and I got my first motorcycle. Well, first motorcycle since I was an adult. I had one in college, and then I made some stupid spending decisions, and I had to sell it for money, so I didn't have it very long. But I had this bike, and my son went in the back, and we went on a camping trip down to, I think, southern Tennessee, and then came back up. And I said to him, I got to pay for the meals for both of us. I got to pay for the gas in the bike. I can't afford the hotels as well. I could right now. I couldn't back then. So we're going to have to learn to camp. So we had maybe like some of you did, just the Walmart camping gear. It wasn't any high-tech gear, just Walmart stuff. And we didn't have any fancy motorcycle gear. I went to an Army surplus store and got him some Army boots and we headed off. We had a great time. On the way back, we stopped in Augusta, Kentucky, which is right on the other side of Cincinnati, right on the river. There's a ferry. You get on the ferry. I don't mean somebody flutters around. I mean a boat. Pull the boat on and pulls across. We stopped in a restaurant right there having our last lunch. I think it's called the Bumblebee. Anyone know? Is it still there? The bumblebee? The beehives, thank you. All of a sudden I realized I may never do this with him again. And I started sobbing. I realized that something had just ended. I was passing through on something. This would never happen again. And I mean the kind of cry because of that. It was overwhelming. It was loud. It was embarrassing, and I couldn't stop it. And it was embarrassing to just do it in front of my son. My son just looked at me. He's a 12-year-old isn't the most emotionally wise person. Doesn't necessarily know how to read a situation or say the right thing. And all he could say is he looked at me after about 5 minutes of sobbing, like heaving, sobbing. The only thing he'd say to me is, Dad, you're getting all emo. Is there anything you say? There's no way he could recognize that I felt like I was losing him and I was losing this thing. This would never happen again. Now, interestingly enough, it has happened a lot. Not that he's ridden on the back of my motorcycle, but eventually he got his own motorcycle, and we started doing motorcycle trips together. We've got another one coming up in next month. We have another trip coming up, and everyone on our trips looks at us because we're the only father-son duo to this day who's going, well, there's one other. But all the dads look at us on these bike trips. They see us interacting. They see me giving him grief. I still give him grief. I'll give my friend grief. I still give him grief. I was with a son. We were laughing about, I think I'm going longer than 20 minutes. I'm just shooting from the hip here. Are we okay? All right. When you're on a bike trip and you're like this, camping on a bike trip, there's some things that are really good etiquette. Like, in the morning, have your stuff packed up so no one's waiting for you, right? So no one's waiting for you. We had this other father-son that was with us, and we're all on our bikes. The engines are started, and the kid is still out packing up all of his stuff. And my son was there. My son was there, and I said to his dad, I said, hey, who's a friend of mine, hey, what's going on? He said, my friend said, yeah, he's going to have to figure that out. And Jake, my son, just laughed so much. He said, Dad, if that was you, you would have told me, get over there, clean up the thing. You're making people wait. Right now, go. What are you thinking? He said, you would have read me the riot act. And he said, and you should have. Because that guy's got to figure that out. So it doesn't mean that you don't say stuff. And by the way, my son has spoken like that to me. Because as friends, he'll speak like that to me now. We've earned that relationship. It's a true friendship. That's what your dad wants. When my son comes over to the house, everyone's like, you guys are too loud. Dominic, yeah, I know. It's what friends are like. They're too loud. People would say to my son in college, I can't believe you spend as much time with your dad as you do. What do? You keep going, well, I know, because we're friends. No one says it's a weird thing to spend time with a friend as often as you do. But dads, if you work this process right, you're going to have a lifelong friend. Sons, if you let your dad work this process right, you're going to have a backstop for the rest of your life. I've got a friend of mine who's very successful, very wealthy. He's an attorney. And his dad died a couple of years ago, and his dad was, I think, about 90 when he died, and my friend at that point was 65, and my friend was really hurting. And I said, why do you think you're hurting so much? And he said, it's because I always felt when my dad was there, I had a backstop, and I just lost my backstop. That's what your dad wants to be for you, sons. Doesn't matter what you're going through, he is going to be there. People are going to come and go out of your life. Your dad will not. It doesn't matter what problem you have, whether it's a problem getting a date, or if it's a problem getting into a school, or it's a bankruptcy problem, or if it's a marriage problem, if it's a health problem, your dad is going to be there. He will stand the line with you. He will be your backstop forever, and he knows this, which is why it hurts him so bad when he gets something wrong with you. My biggest regrets are how I over-disciplined my son. My biggest regrets is when I lost my temper and I wasn't being a king. I was just being an offended person who just wanted to exert authority. I wasn't being a father. My worst memories. And it hurts us as dads, the mistakes we made. And we know that we made the mistakes. But we have a vision and a goal, and it's that you're going to be our friend for the rest of our life. That's what we want. So tonight, or today, you might just want to talk this with your son. What phase are you in? Do you feel like you're in one phase, he thinks you're in another phase? What do you have to do to get to the next level? That'd be a really deep, meaningful conversation with you. Guys, it's the greatest relationship other than a spouse or other than your relationship with God you're going to ever have. So enjoy it. Thanks for letting me be with you.
Thanks for joining us on this journey toward aggressive living. Find more resources, articles, past episodes, and live events over at briantome.com. My new books, repackaged edition of The 5 Marks of a Man and a brand new 5 Marks of a Man tactical guide are open right now on Amazon. If you haven't yet, leave this podcast a rating and review. It really helps get the show in front of new listeners. And if you want to connect, find me on Instagram at Brian Tome. The Aggressive Life is a production of Crossroads Church, Cincinnati, Ohio.